No mai, haere mai, ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. By the looks of our emails, the comments, the tone of things on social, New Zealand rugby fans are a mixture of angry and confused at what happened in Wellington against the Boks. We've had plenty of emails wanting NZR to axe razor. It's a natural response given our legacy, but considering New Zealand Rugby's conservative approach to firing coaches, it seems unlikely. Still, the All Blacks have considerable problems, especially at the set piece. Today we'll get into those and figure out what must change, especially at scrum time. And to do that, we've called in the help of World Cup winning All Blacks prop Charlie Faumuina. So yes, it's a big episode. There is plenty to talk. We will look at the record loss, we will praise the Boks, and we will critique the All Blacks' capitulation. We will have the discussion in the context of arguably the best ever Rugby Championship after 4 rounds. All 4 teams are in the running before the Bledisloe and South Africa versus Argentina series. We'll try to do it in a pragmatic way. And on a more positive note, let's not forget there are Rugby World Cup semi-finals to enjoy as well. 2 epic showdowns with 4 teams that are looking strong. Our focus will be on what the Black Ferns must do to beat a slick Canada outfit. We'll look at England versus France too. Plus, we have another Rugby Ready giveaway for a month of free training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's training team. And as I mentioned, there'll be your emails and comments, as well as all of the in-depth analysis you come to expect from this show. Now, we don't have Bryn Hall in today. It is just James Parsons and myself. So let's put the pressure all on you.
Oh, Brynner, just doesn't want to come for the heat. No, look, it's all expected. We've sort of come to terms. My inbox was certainly filled with a lot of passion, and I always say I think that's one of our biggest strengths is that care for the legacy, and look, the players and the coaches will feel it, I suppose, just as much, if not more.
Brynner is in Japan. He'll be back next week, but he's made his way over to resume his pre-season training. So we'll see more from Brynner as we head into the Bledisloe Cup. And of course, we've got Charlie Faumuina later on to talk about the scrums and what on earth was going on there on the weekend. But plenty to get into. Let's start with the Ashley and Martin turning point. The turning point is obviously the second half, and what happened in the second half and how that reflects probably a bigger problem, and a consistently bigger problem that we've had over the last 2 years. Jim.
You can isolate the second half, but it wasn't going all our way. And I think also looking back to Eden Park, like we said it last week, if we allowed South Africa to have that many opportunities again, and we knew Wellington was going to be dry conditions, it was too much ball, too much territory to be able to withstand it. Any defence would crumble. And I suppose it shows that in the sense that South Africa still had 21 turnovers. But there's some key stats for me that just shows why they were able to find the space on the outside, because it's really easy. We'll deal with the set piece on a separate example, but I think the breakdown's really critical. And we say rugby's simple, and I've said it last few weeks, like you win the collision, you put yourself in a position defensively to bring line speed or play on top of teams. Well, South Africa won the collision on attack in particular. They had 70% gain line, which is no surprise, but I think the All Blacks haven't faced 70% gain line this season. They had 50% lightning quick ball. But one of the smart things, and I don't know if it's Tony Brown or Rusty Erasmus, is they only had 13% dominant carries. As we've sort of outlined, they're used to sort of 50 and 60% dominant carries. And you'd look at that stat and go, oh, man, the All Blacks must have done a job like in the tight collision. But it was more that the South Africans didn't try and overplay their hand in the contact. You know, this idea of post-contact meters and fighting your way actually buys defence time. And what they did is they almost sacrificed those extra 2 or 3 metres to recycle that ball quickly. So from a logical point of view, 70% gain line, you're on the back foot defensively. 50% lightning quick ball, you're again on the back foot. You just got no chance to sort of get set. And then every time they took a close collision in tight, and you're expecting it to be that big brute collision, the D tightens, doesn't get that. Then they have that quick recycle, and then they play to the width, and the skill of Willemser and co just exposed it. So it would be easy to go look at the 70% defensive stat and go, oh, one-on-one tackles is a key focus. To bring it back to why it makes it challenging is purely around that collision area and the way the South Africans sort of dominated their collisions, but also played the chess game really well in terms of deciding when to go through the middle, but when to sacrifice a little bit to gain a lot on the edge.
Well, we've got a few emails come through talking about it, considering we saw on Monday night a team that suggested that things could be fast and loose from the Springboks. Is it a surprise that was the thing they did? Surely the All Blacks were expecting that.
Yeah, absolutely, because as I say, like if you look at it statistically, like they had 12 entries, they had 13 entries last week. The weather conditions only meant they could, capitalise on 2, and then they got 6, and still 6 turnovers. They still had 21 turnovers. Like if you looked at it the first half, you would have sat there and gone, this isn't working. Like they were dropping a lot of ball, they missed a lot of opportunities, but they stuck with it. They backed their game plan and the passes started to stick. But I think they made a big adjustment. They made a real big adjustment in terms of that tight collision. It almost removed a little bit of ego to generate that quick ball to skin them on the outside. And that is not that easy to do, I don't think. When you think of the Springboks and the way that they want to, absolutely dismantle you in those tight quarters, they were really mature in their approach, and it shows, I suppose, their ability now to really understand multiple ways of playing rugby. You've got the ability to play that kick game and you put Pollard back in, and they've got this ability to put some X-factor players out wide, but the forwards have to play their role as well. And obviously they did that at set piece, but more importantly, they were smart in and around that collision.
What about the All Blacks adjusting to that then? How do you go about adjusting to it if you were expecting to drop a heavy shoulder in and tighten up your defence? The conversation that changes that.
So the adjustment starts at set piece. You've got to have parity or dominance, and then in the collision area, but you can't do that if they're on the front foot already from the set piece.
And if you can't maintain your set piece, you can't have ball, you can't exert pressure, and suddenly everything is going against you.
Yeah, but understanding as well, if you looked at the Eden Park test, we're 3 from 4 entries. We were 1 from 4 this week.
Yeah.
So there was the same amount, and had we capitalised more and forced that scoreboard pressure, then it makes the opposition antsy. We didn't capitalise, and then they grew and grew in confidence. But I think they would look at that first half and be disappointed with the amount of, it could have been more points in reality of the amount of ball they had.
Yeah.
They still tackled at 70% as well, the Springboks. So stats say one picture, like the All Blacks still had an expansive game and they still broke tackles. But as we know, one of their best growths this season is finishing things off. Well, it was just a game where they didn't capitalise on the opportunities they created. Some
of the emails that we had come through really reflected that. Matthew Villiamu basically said that they had a day to think about, and I've come to the same conclusion that the Springboks are far superior. Over 2 matches, they showed their dominance at set piece, in the air, off the bench, and all across the park. The first game, I thought there was way too much backslapping for us going on. Great result against a good team in the wet, but did it paper over the cracks, and then we saw the cracks open wide in Wellington?
Well, not if you watch this show.
No.
I don't think so. It didn't paper over the cracks. So he said, if you provided that much opportunity again, you will struggle to stop it.
Yeah.
So celebrating small mids, you make a big play, why not?
Yeah.
What are you just supposed to be gloomy the whole time?
Yeah.
If you want to clap your hands and you want to get your mate up, I'm all for it. Get him behind. If you look at it from a statistical base and physically dominance performance, the key areas where South Africa were better was line-out and skill set. They still won the same amount of collision at Eden Park, but they couldn't finish it off.
Yeah. This
time, and the wet allows defences to recover. That's just straight. It wasn't wet, and in the second half, the ball stuck. They had 6 turnovers in the 22 in the first half, South Africa.
Yeah.
6. They were 0-6. So, then they were 6-6. And it looks, and I get it, that's what you remember as the last 20 minutes. But to say, I just can't buy into the fact that to say that anyone gave up. What I'm saying is it's very hard to do your individual tackle technique and roll when you're on the back foot. Yeah. And then you get into the position of over-trying, getting between 2 rolls, trying to overcompensate for inside, and then it's just simple catch and pass.
Yeah.
Do you know, just from a logical point of view, that's what happened.
It is an interesting thing where we look at what was said in the post-match with Kieran Reid and Mills essentially suggesting they kind of gave up in the second half.
No.
That must be, if you're an All Blacks team and you hear 2 greats of the game, 2 centurions of your team putting that out there, That's got to hurt for this team.
Oh yeah, I think it's also, of course it will definitely hurt. I think it hurts them. You can see it in their face and expressions, and you know, the amount of tests they played. And I think the biggest thing I took out of what they said is the ability to problem solve.
Yeah.
And how it could just go from bad to worse, I think, is what they were really alluding to, because they know as well as anyone, no one decides to miss a tackle, but there's so many factors that happen before it that lead to it. And you know, the set piece frustration is one, and then you start trying to over try in other areas, and then two is like sometimes we've got to just credit the opposition. Like the Springboks were really strong. They were just on fire. Like sometimes momentum in sport, hate to bring it up, but you just got to look at the NRL and see how momentum in the Broncos Raiders game changes. Like you just can't stop it sometimes, and it's not an excuse, and they won't be making excuses. They'll know they need to sort out their set piece, and they'll know they need to sort out the one-on-one collision area. But I just don't think we can say someone gave up. It was just more, what I took out of what Rito and Mills said is, okay, we need to get better at problem solving on the run, especially in the second half, because you know we've done some work in terms of breaking the game down into quarters. And you look at the first half, it's, you know, we're light years ahead of every opposition. On average, every opposition we play, we're light years ahead in the key statistics, which we've gone with points, obviously, penalties, won and conceded, turnovers, carry dominance, line breaks and missed tackles. But when you go to be fair, this is for just the Rugby Championship this year, and we will probably look to expand it to get a clearer picture. But if we look at the Rugby Championship this year, in the third quarter, we're definitely behind in points in both the third quarter and the fourth, which obviously the weekend sort of does skew these results, so we've got to take it in context. But where I noticed the biggest thing is in dominant carries. In the third quarter, we're 16 behind the opposition in terms of this. So that third quarter, what that looks at is we're giving away a lot of penalties, which allows opposition into your half, and then they're just, you know, almost setting up camp from those compounding areas of penalties. Against Argentina, it didn't come in the wave of sevens, but they took threes. And this week it came in the waves of sevens. And if you can't like slow that ball down, or you can't win or disrupt set piece, it just shows how quick a game can be taken away from you. And I think coming out of the break, being able to start as they did, because I think when you look at last year, they put that focus on that fourth quarter and the bench and the timing of reserves, and things started to trend in the right direction. I think they finished with a plus of 1.36 in terms of that plus and minus stat on average in the fourth quarter of last year. They were just plus in the third last year, but severely due to the game on the weekend, to be fair, that is hampering the results. They're in the minus category. So I think it's a big focus. That's when your problem solving is, because teams go into half time, the coaches of the opposition go, look, there's opportunities here, and teams seem to be really almost slingshotting out of half time into that first 20-minute break. It was the same, obviously, against the French as well.
So I suppose that begs the question about the thought process in that second half and what they're doing in order to identify the areas in the opposition. I mean, there are a lot of very established players in there, hundreds of test matches for Beauden Barrett. You know, Damien McKenzie's been around a long time, Scott Barrett, Ardie Savia. Those guys have played a lot of rugby.
They have, yeah. But, and I know heaps of people have emailed in and gone, oh, get James to read out the stats about the forward pack. Well, they were averages.
Yeah.
So the stats will still be the same because it's one game.
Yeah.
So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, it really is as simple as, like, rugby's not complicated. And when you start trying to overcomplicate it and find like massive big rocks to fix, it's not there. And I look forward to Chaz's discussion, because scrums are a fine margin, lineouts are a fine margin. Yes, it was, you know, consistent throughout the 80 minutes that we hadn't seen, but we know if they can get those sorted, they are still trending in an upward direction. Now, to answer your question around, like, I think we could have made a change earlier. South Africa were running everything in exit, so you're so used to the box kick. So we're set in the backfield. with the box work, but they ran 80% of the exits, they had no failures, they kicked 20%. That is a high amount of running. Now, this is just the way I remember it, and I keep using him as an example, but Wayne Smith, just the concept of, okay guys, we're going to paint the picture, we're protecting the backfield, but late we're going to press up. And then you're putting the pressure back on. So that there is ability to problem solve. It's a little bit risky, but like it's not working staying back. Like they were getting into our territory quite easy, but also them running out creates opportunity. If we can press and put them under trouble in a wide breakdown, then we're starting to put pressure back onto them. And as we saw, if you don't let them play on their terms in Eden Park, you do get errors and you get results.
Going back to the ability to get over the gain line, etc., Patrick Tuipulotu, Asafo Moore, the fact that Cody Taylor wasn't there, so Taukiaho wasn't coming on in the second half, the bench lacks some of the impetus that it probably had at the back end of last year with some of those guys who were doing such a good job of smashing opposition bodies.
Yeah, I think Off is another one. He is a big piece that was coming off the bench towards the end. But rather than making it about, I suppose, certain structures or individuals, what I would look at is the methodology of selection, and we had 3 locks. Now, 3 locks gives you more weight at scrum time and extra line-out options to put pressure under. We went away from that, and it's not about who's at 6. I think Simon Parker did a fantastic, outstanding job. But it does take away that ability to pressure at set piece time. So if you look at, I suppose, a risk analysis or risk versus reward, there may be a look when next facing an opposition like the Springboks or the Springboks, that the 3 locks may really suit the way they play and suit the style that they need to get on the front foot is one thing. But I think it's really critical you don't go, this happened against the Springboks, so we must do it against Australia because it's a different team. Totally different forward pack, totally different style of play. So I know people will be like, there must be changes and rah, rah, rah. Change it for the purpose of winning the game. Don't change it because you're changing it for change's sake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's essentially what Rassi did on the weekend.
But they stuck to it, man. That was courageous of South Africa to stick to it. The amount of errors they had in that first half, it looked like they'd just started playing the style, and maybe throughout the week we're learning new things. But eventually you saw, okay, things are starting to click, and there were people coming and going in that first half, which disrupted things. But I think that was a genuine sign that they are probably the most versatile team in terms of game plans.
They've got a deep squad.
And it just shows you as well, because everyone's like, oh, if they name things early and it gives you time. Does it really? Even if you know what's coming, I use the Crusader example all the time, when we're in the Blues, you knew how they're going to play, you knew what they're going to do, still got to stop it.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in that second 40.
Yeah, and then it's a matter of having multiple plans for stopping it as well, right? You can't rely on one, because if they smash that, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, it is, but it was an avalanche.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can't pinpoint one moment where you could have stopped it. It was just an avalanche. It was. I can't look at the game and go, if we'd done this and that, because there just wasn't a moment. It was relentless, and it just was a wave, and it kept coming, and the accuracy was the biggest difference.
Yeah.
In their skill set, catch, pass. Everything, statistically actually remained the same, except for our ability to make one-on-one tackles and slow the ball down, and their ability to find space.
Damien Villains, considering how good D'Alenda is, to have another second 5 option like that, who can also play 10 and 15, it's quite a superb.
Yeah, and he was roaming.
Yeah.
He was roaming. Moody's roaming. They might have numbers on their back, but they can. It's almost I keep bringing up NRL, but it's the Cameron Munster Maverick style backline, and that's really hard to preview, adjust to, because half the time, and it's one of Damien McKenzie's biggest weapon from our point of view, is they don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know what they're going to do. And that's the most dangerous, because the old adage of the defence will give you the picture of what you should do, they are very good at exposing that. It took them 40 minutes to warm into it, but then they're away.
And you can do that if you've got some dominance in those other areas, right? Like then, otherwise, like if you look at Damien, if that's not happening, he's got to try to make something. It's not like he's looking for the hole as opposed to seeing the hole, if you see what I mean.
No, and you've got to understand in defensive structures, when your scrum's struggling and they're scrumming for penalties, okay, well, you don't want to give away the penalty, but you can't get off early. So then the defence in the backs has to tighten, and that's why there's, like, do you know what I mean? Like it all comes back, everyone says, up the front, Parsons and, it's numbers 1 to 5, but it is. Like if that platform's not set, you just can't release early enough. And as I always say, like if there's any hesitation or you can't win that race, it's just you're chasing your tail.
There were some really interesting stats, and I know that we get lots and lots of feedback. This particular one from Tony Jackson, I thought brought up an interesting statistic that didn't make a lot of sense to me necessarily. It says it's about time to scrutinise the negatives, because we're glass half full Aotearoa Rugby Pod, of course, and what the common mistakes / failures
what a horrible
of the
way
team
to look at life
constantly seem to be doing, and sort it out. We play so much in our own half in 22 and only achieve 40% territory in total. I wonder if James's in-depth stats can prove me right or wrong. So here's the interesting part of the statistic. For territory for the All Blacks, when you look at the breakdown of this game, in the first half, they only had 24% of territory. That was when they were playing their best. They kicked 17 times to the Springboks 9, but only had 24% of territory. And they outkicked the Boks by a couple of 100 metres, but still only had 24% of territory. And in the second half, they had 57% of territory. And look what happened. What does territory mean?
Nothing. That's what I'm saying. Like, one stats tell you half the picture. You've actually got to look at the game as a whole and then go watch it. So you've got to look at stats, then watch it. And that's what I mean is, like, they had 57% territory because South Africa were running everything from kickoff. Or from those kicks. They weren't looking to kick it. So it does take some time to get in their half. But once they'd worn down and got in the half, the Springboks catch and pass score, they scored very quickly. So territory, they didn't have a strong territory count because they didn't spend much time in there. They scored quite quickly once they got over there. But they'd manipulated the defence in their own half. So although one stat says one thing, it's also in the first half, the 24% territory comes from, penalties at scrum time, indiscretion, in and around the breakdown allows them, I think there was 3 or 4 penalties at the start of the game where all kickable penalties, but they went into the corner. So then you've got to compare territory with your penalty stat, maybe your turnover count, where those turnovers happen. All paints the picture of what it is. So if you look at things in isolation, you can tell any story you want. But you've got to actually go, okay, well, why did that happen? What I will say about the Springboks, though, they have massive courage and they're prepared to lose. That's a big difference mindset-wise. Like they are prepared to lose. They don't like it, their people don't like it, but they're prepared to go all in. Like once they've done their prep, they go all in and they stick with it. And that's not as easy as they make it look. And I think the difference in mindset here in New Zealand is we can't afford to lose. And that's a different mindset in itself. And that pressure and being able to deal with that, I'm not saying that should change, absolutely not, but they are prepared to lose and probably a little bit more accepted.
It's interesting, the French sent down a third team.
It's like our people, like our fans will have go at the team because they were in control of it. Whereas a lot of the Springboks will look for reasons like the ref and things that were missed on the field. Like they're quite, they have their players back. It's quite a different, when they lose, it's quite a different pressure. They expect them to win, but they go, well, why didn't we win? Because we are the best, and they'll find, whereas we sort of pile in to the team, which I get because they're in control. They're the only ones that can go out on their field. But I'm just trying to show you that it does change the ability to just go, well, we didn't get it right.
So as promised, we're going to get into the scrums and what went down I suppose in Wellington, but also to a degree as well, there was a couple of occasions in Auckland where the scrum and the set piece just didn't go to plan for the All Blacks. And to help us along with that, we've got 50-test All Black World Cup winner, Charlie Faumuina, to come in and join us. Charlie, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me.
What are you up to these days before we get into the scrums, mate?
Yeah, I've just recently bought a business, so just installing garage doors, so it's just underneath that Dominator brand, and yeah, just doing a little bit of coaching with Sacred Heart, and at the moment Auckland Storm. So
speaking of getting the job done, scrum time, the All Blacks obviously under a little bit of pressure, both on their ball and the Springboks ball. If we look at their ball first and foremost, from a problem-solving point of view, the quick hook from Takiaho and the ability of Wallace Satiti off the back limited it, but it really didn't allow them to have that platform to attack off. What do you think the key changes are, like, in terms of, I suppose, the scrum itself on their ball?
Slowmack's just come back last week. Maybe he hasn't had enough time in the seat to be able to go against like a big pack like South Africa. And I think when they started him, you could probably, he's strong, man. He's solid. I think he just came in and was a little bit underdone. But yeah, I think for me, if I was in a situation like that, like I'll probably be trying to isolate Ox a little bit more, try to take him outside, keep him on my outside, and then have enough time for that ball to get to the back. So,
Charlie, I want to just take you back to what you said about having Ox on your outside. What does that mean exactly for a layman? How do you put him in a position of weakness?
Going more to his to my right side, trying to straighten him up a little bit more, because I think when he comes in and that little angle that he gets, he's just too powerful to be able to give him that type of advantage. It's too hard to try and hold him down. So just trying to take any advantage away from him in that pack is really crucial. So.
How important is the back five? You know, a couple of times you saw, I suppose, feet scraping rather than some of the settled platform that we sort of got in that last 15 minutes?
Obviously, the back five, that's your engine, and like that, a lot of our power comes from them. And that connection piece in regards to the front row back five, that's really important. So, yeah, look, obviously you got to give credit to South Africa, a lot of power coming through, but and putting that connection under pressure, but yeah, probably another work on the next weekend.
Is there a mass thing as well, Chaz? Like, we obviously had the methodology of selecting 3 locks and Tupou Vati playing at 6. That gives you a little bit more size and I suppose scrum first focused.
Man, obviously, like me playing in France, played there for the last 7 years, there's a lot of big men over there, and I think with New Zealand, how we play in New Zealand, there's a lot of certain boxes that we have to fill to be able to play in New Zealand. Obviously, like the fitness, the speed, the strength. Those South African boys, they wouldn't have a 5-minute Bronco, but their first job is the scrum and one set piece. Give the referee good pictures that when it comes to 50-50s, he's going to reward the dominant scrum. And I think, yeah, at the moment, South Africa have got a lot of good pieces in their game that they can afford to have a lot of these big boys rolling around. But, yeah, it just makes it harder for us when it comes to scrum time. So. Is
the focus there, you think, on those elements? Like when you play a South Africa or a France, the focus is there from New Zealand that we understand that you need mass? I suppose you can't just run these guys around these days.
To an extent, you know, like I think as a forward pack, we got to be a lot more physical to be able to contain these guys. When they get those easy runs in, it's just you're just going to ride them all the way back to your try line. Eh? So we have to meet them physically first, and then it's going to help us get a better result. So.
I've sort of laboured the point around when we win collisions, and I think that's what you're saying there. Everything else comes after that, but if you lose that, you almost, as you say, there's no way back really once that momentum starts after you lose that initial collision.
I always think when I was playing the ABs, like for a team to beat the ABs, they got to come through a 4-pack, and us as a 4-pack, yes, I feel for those boys in the ABs, but that's the only way you really get on top of the ABs is when you come through a 4-pack. And obviously South Africa, did it on the weekend. So
Can we look at from a positive lens, because there's a lot of hysteria around, we can't scrum after one or two games. Like, there is ability to fix it. You know, like the in terms of the IOUs during the week, but the planning and the small adjustments, just to understand, I suppose, for the layman out there, the fine margins of a scrum and how quickly things can go from okay platform to gone.
Like, obviously there's some tough conversations and it's just little detail stuff. Like it's just, and like, you know, like sometimes the lock feels like he's pushing hard, but his body position's out of whack compared to his prop, and that can really affect a scrum. So a lot of little things like that, that's really going to be, it makes a difference. So
it's interesting you bring up that point. We've had an email come through. In fact, this guy's emailed me 5 times now, waiting for his chance to get his email on. Chris Loader is his name. And Chris basically says, you know, back in the day when he was playing in the 70s at Kiokio United in the King Country against Pine Tree, way back then, also played under Pine Tree. He says Pine Tree used to teach them to bind by the top of your mate's shorts. This made our backsides come together and gave us a wedge-like shape. It gave more power as you were pushing, but also pulling each other forward. Pine Tree would tell us that... Here we go. We're as much use as a limp dick if we didn't do it. That's pure Pine Tree meads. Chipper, tell me, is that how it's done these days?
Well, I think you need to have a really strong connection, but I think what Chaz is alluding to is there's a lot more focus in, I suppose, one side of the scrum and the other side of the scrum, and that connection all the way through. So not only your lock, but your flanker, and then the hooker and the 8 are sort of the ones in the middle that initiate all the triggers. But there is more of a focus, you'd say, these days, Chaz, in terms of working with your sort of your tight head lock and your flanker, versus the other loose head lock, and then putting a hooker either side and putting that pressure through in terms of that drill aspect?
Obviously a scrum is 8, but there's a lot of little connections inside that 8 that makes a massive difference. So yeah, it's exactly that. It's just, and obviously those are the conversations that they've got to have to fix this, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they're going to get a reaction come next week's game against Australia that a lot of these things will be fixed. So
the scrum's advanced a lot in terms of position on the field, what side you want to get up. The 8 controls a lot of the triggers, so it's about them being connected with their prop first and foremost, and their flanker, and then the 8's head comes in, and he almost will control like a rudder almost which way they're going.
He's binding the locks more than the locks are binding each other.
It's his job where a lock's focus is prop. They've just got to focus on that prop. They'll still have a bind, and it should be a firm bind. I've never been a lock, so I don't quite know how that works. But I think in terms of, I suppose, a method to the madness, it's more about prop. Prop lock is probably the most scrum thing in scrum training. Like, they spend hours doing it because of that connection's needs to be perfect, because you need, and I think if we use the scrum at the 65th minute, where the All Blacks actually did really well against the Springboks. So they got the hit and all their feet were on the ground and they went in unison. And that's what Chaz needs to feel, is his lock's connected with him, but when he extends and catches up, the lock has to extend and catch up at the same time. If that's slightly off or a foot slightly up, you can get taken like that. Especially against the Springbok pack, where mass is big, but also their technique is so strong.
Is there anything else that the Boks brought that maybe hindered the All Blacks slightly?
Yeah, I think there's just one area around on the All Blacks ball. One is, I suppose, South Africa's shape is perfect. Like you want to go like a staircase, so you go front row, locks, 8, and flankers, and that's in a really good place. And then I suppose their steadiness. And they've all got their feet locked into the ground, and their legs in a position where they're not sitting too far back, but they're not overextended that they can't push. They're almost primed. And then it's the role Reinach plays. Like, he just watches Taukei'aho's foot, and he knows once that's up, the ball's coming in, and you can hear him just scream, and from that, it was just like, the way they fired, they were just like sitting there like predators, just ready, like they were just in the
revving the engine, waiting to put into gear.
Yeah, and it was like the perfect position. But it also, what it does sometimes for the opposition is it puts you in fool's gold, because you're almost in a good state and you think, oh yeah, no, we've got things under control, and then that foot lifts, whack. And that transfer of weight was exceptional, but Reinach was a big part of that. And when he was a little bit off, they weren't as efficient, but man, those early scrums, you can really hear him extremely loud. To be fair, I watched it without commentary, but it was impressive. And it just shows you that just the fine margins, and you just need everyone doing their job. And especially on their ball, I think he was a big catalyst. But also on South Africa's ball, you watch, I think it was, what did I make a note here, 53rd minute, the scrum, so it's South Africa's ball, and the All Blacks hit, and they chase. And Reinach's down there, and he sees that they're not in that square and steady position, and he just stands up, doesn't put the ball in.
Yeah.
Not illegal, just smart.
Yeah.
And they get the penalty for pushing early. You know, so like Reinach was on the job, and the role of a 9 is so crucial to a scrum, and he was just he was simply outstanding both sides of the ball. So
Charlie, if you look now towards the Bledisloe Cup and you look at the way that they might approach, is it a different style of scrummaging that you might have against the Wallabies? Is it a different approach to what you might be looking to do to an oxen chair? You know, like how do you tailor what they need to do to get success against a different team?
Yes, and obviously playing against South Africa, big reputation to scrum. There's a lot more pressure there in regards to them, but if those connections, or if their stuff is bone deep, they should be fine next time they come up against South Africa again. So.
It's bone deep. I just hear Steve Hansen ringing in my ears whenever I hear that word. It's bone deep. It's bone deep. Nice. Hey, thank you very much, Charlie. Really appreciate your expertise and coming on the show, mate.
No, I always appreciate you guys having me, man.
If you, a family member or a friend, wants to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway to suit. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player, fan, fit and strong. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership, with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. A huge congratulations to this week's winner of the Rugby Ready giveaway, Dan Piper. You've scored 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership. And thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories, and if you didn't win this time around, don't worry, you're still in the running, so keep those amazing submissions coming, and it could be your name that we announce next week. Want in? It's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link or using the QR code below. And we're very ready for the Rugby World Cup semi-finals after a great weekend of quarter-final action. The Black Ferns, they didn't have it all go their way. There was a lot of good play and then a little bit of messy play against the South African team that tried a few interesting things like entire team mauls and all those kind of things. It was quite a fun game to watch in that way because it was different.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very tight in that first half. Like, we obviously gave a lot of opportunities through, I suppose, discipline in particular, but also skill set errors. I suppose the one thing out of the Irish game and this game was their ability to defend the line. If you look at the Canadian side, they had such quick ball. I think it was 85% lightning quick ball. But the one thing the Black Ferns have had ability to do, and there's two reasons why, and I think injuries will be key around where they've been successful around this, but their loose forwards, the competitiveness of the loose forwards has really enabled them to slow ball down. But their sevens players in the backs, they really disrupt and put a lot of pressure in and around the breakdown. And, you know, like that ability to slow that ball defensively allows them to get set and then make their one-on-one tackles. Yes, they'll face different athletes and I suppose more explosive and powerful when against the likes of England or France or Canada this week. But I do think from a systems point of view, they look rock solid because they don't want to be defending that much in the first 40 against those sides, but they've tested it out, and it seems to hold true.
They held pretty firm, and I mean the French were also tested heavily by Ireland. They defended like their lives depended on it. Like they had a third of the ball that the Irish had, and they just had to tackle. 13 entries from Ireland. So there are a lot of teams that have had to in the quarterfinals absorb.
Yeah, man, I think when you look at both New Zealand and the French, it's their own, the one positive, it's their own indiscretion that's providing that opportunity rather than systems breaking down. So that means they're in control of their own destiny. They need to sort it out fast though, because that's 2 weeks in a row. I'm talking about Black Ferns here, 2 weeks in a row where they've survived it. But it's just, you know that the semi-final and the final are going to be won on such fine margins. You don't, like, you can expect to give some penalties away, but you just don't want to have that sort of sustained pressure for 40 minutes. But talk about second halves, you know, talking about the Springboks second half, the Black Ferns second half was just unbelievable. And a lot of it generated off speed of ball, similar. But Maya Joseph, I thought that it's the best test I've seen her play. Like her speed to the breakdown, but then her decision making and the ability, that tracer bullet pass. Like she's, extremely exciting. But it's also those effort areas to put kick pressure on, which led to a try. There was a lot to like about her game, and again the competitiveness of her and Poldy Lane. It's you can see it working wonders as they go through this tournament.
One of the places where they, getting into this tournament, had their biggest strength was in the midfield. And we're now looking at a bit of a minor crisis there. Duplessis is heading off. She's not in the team anymore. She's got an injury. We've got Brunt, who's got a possible HIA. We've got the same problem with Setefano. So Stacey Waka is now the only fit person out of those four who were relatively interchangeable to some degree because they're all such quality players. Where do they go now? Do they try to put Ruahe into 12? Do they switch Waka in and use Woodman in the midfield? Like, what is the best option for them?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be... Yeah, well, I don't know who's available at the moment, but I think if they were to be out, I think the safest play in a semi-final is move Ruahe to 12. I think that's why they went for the experience as in the backup 10. And I think, like, just even our interview with Portia, like, she goes, I love my time in the midfield, but, you know, like, I'm still, it's quite a hard position, you know, like, and she's doing such a good job on the wing. I don't think you want to do that move into the midfield when you're not fully across that international level, because it will be a jump up from Opiki. So I think that looks like the logical choice to me.
Brazier, Demand, Waka, if those other players aren't available.
Yeah, and you just know, like, experience is going to be crucial. And obviously Kelly, we had her on here before she left as well. She's been through it all. And you talk about problem solving on the run. She's someone that is one of the best to do it. And almost like the big moments she'll lift. Like, even when you look at the Black Ferns trial and I suppose her road into the squad is, you know, any opportunity she was given, she rose to it. So that's what you normally see with someone with that amount of experience. They don't need too many reps. They don't need a lot of lead-in time. They can just back, you know, I suppose, the collateral they have in their brain and make the right calls on the day. It just seems logical in my opinion.
I really like the way that they use Jorja Miller on kickoff. Like, the way that she returns the ball, puts on some footwork and leaves those runners coming up to her in danger. It's a different kind of approach to the way that most rugby teams play, right? Yeah,
and when you hear Jorja speak, I spoke about it before in terms of Rusty's ability to get players to believe. She's got a licence. Like that freedom is incredible, I think, as a player. And, you know, you'll expect some errors, but, like, she's like the best athlete, really, in rugby, you'd have to say. Like, she could play anywhere, but, you know, like you heard from her herself, she's like, I wouldn't want to be in the midfield. She loves the loosies because she's involved in everything. But then she's also positioned to act like a midfielder and or the edge on attack. So it's like that maverick role or that roaming role just suits her perfectly from her sevens background. But I think she's literally got the skill set and the physicality to do it. But I think it gives her a lot of confidence that she's the person that can make the big play and has the, I suppose, a little bit more forgiveness if it doesn't come off.
Yeah, push the pass, whatever it might be 50-50.
You see it back yourself, pull your trigger. There's certain players that you want to have that licence.
I suppose the one thing they really need to make sure of is that last week we were praising the kicking. This week the kicking at goal was difficult, but they seem to have a backup, which is at least good in Braxton Sorensen.
Yeah, I mean that was a pretty sharp nudge. Look, I think it is important though. Like, we need a good day. This is going to be fine margins. We had the kick to win, obviously, in Christchurch. So, like, they've shown they can do it, and you've said, like, got a good backup. But I think Renee's the one. Like, man, she's got the runs on the board. I think you want to put those big moments on experience that you can draw on. You don't want to put it on a young person's or a young player's shoulder, although she's full of confidence. And if she's the only option out there, absolutely do it. But you need your experienced people to step up in the big moment in these big games.
So let them have a bad day. Continue to
I'd rather it there.
Carry on. Yeah.
I think, and they'll learn from it. And technique might have been off, or they might, we're big on the old prep. They might not have done the same things and so forth. So just try and replicate what they did going into that Ireland test would be the key for me.
The Canadians looked slick. They whether it's De Goody, who's got X Factor as a lock, or from 9 through 15, the way they execute, you got to be on your game.
Yeah, and I think it's like, we think about the game we played earlier this year in Pack 4, their willingness to take quick taps in their own half and really try to expose the Black Ferns in and around the tightness defensively and try and get to that edge. So I think it's almost, I always try to give another team that you may have seen if you watch enough rugby, but it's almost, I feel like the Canadians are like the 2012 Chiefs in terms of, they'll take it, they'll put the ball down, walk away, come back, do a quick throw in, they'll quick tap, they'll shape like they're going to kick and, quick tap or do a cross-field kick. So they're just not a team you can switch. You can't button off, and it's going to be tight as it was. Like we had to fight pretty hard for that draw in Christchurch. So I have no doubt. I think the team, the Black Ferns team, is well advanced because they were sort of looking at the World Cup squad, creating opportunities, and there was a lot of changes. But I think the Canadians are well advanced as well. So I still think this will be won within those 7 points.
Yeah, it scared me seeing them. Pelletier, the half-back, you got Tessier in there, you got Shell at the back. Players are in beautiful angles. They support so well for Canada.
Yeah, and I think probably the reason why you feel that as well, because the Wallaroos have actually grown a lot. If you think about that test in Wellington, they put us under pressure for a good 40 minutes. So I suppose you have those memories and you see how flawless the Canadians played. It does, yeah. I think it's a hard one because I think both squads have advanced a hell of a lot from the last time they played. And as we get to this part of the tournament, there is a lot of injuries for all squads, and sometimes that second tier of depth does allow especially for the Wallaroos, it does allow for, I suppose, teams to really rip you apart.
It feels like a 50-50 game, this Canada-New Zealand game. It really could go either way. Look, I think if you look at the way the Black Ferns have grown, I put them as slight favourites. But I think the big shift they need is that first 40. And the one thing is sometimes you focus as a team on that first 40. They still need that desperation and desire and willingness to play in the second 40, because that's held them in good stead. Don't want to have a better 40 and be ahead by a few, but then not have that same, because you go into half time at 10-10 against South Africa, and you're expected to win by plenty. You come out with an edge and a focus, and you really... And they did.
Yeah, but you still, we need that across the 80s, so they need to just make sure that although fixing one issue doesn't open up a dip or opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, on the other game, you've got England-France. England, again, looked super dominant against Scotland. The French were in the trenches. Cards. at the wrong end of the field, they had 13 entries against them and only made 2 themselves. They were in the trenches that game and somehow came out of it.
Yeah, but it's also the fatigue that takes. Like, it sounds ridiculous, like they've got a week between games, but banged up bodies, less time on the grass, and also I suppose it doesn't give you that freedom or confidence going into the semi. However, we do know the psyche of any French team, that it won't really bother them, I don't think. Like, they'll just back themselves to do it on the day. But that English side, if you look at all the key facets, they just dominate. It's going to take a monumental effort to topple them in this competition, I think.
Especially at home.
Yeah, but they don't even look fade. Like, they just don't look rattled by it. They're very process driven and very operational. Like, there's emotion, at some tries, but they look like a methodical military group. Like, they're not letting. I just don't feel like they're letting the noise of home. They just seem very measured, and they're still hurting, I think, of the World Cup here. And I just think they've just got this razor sharp focus, and as I say, I just think it's going to take a lot, because even when they make mistakes, they still put the opposition straight away back under pressure. Like, they don't dwell on things, they get to move on quite quickly, but when they don't dwell on errors, they also don't dwell on the good stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, okay, finish, back to okay, finish, back. Like, they're just very methodical in the process, and I think just their thought process probably mentally more than anything.
Right, so you are picking a New Zealand-England final again.
Yep.
That will make it beautiful. The storyline that runs through that is amazing, really.
Yeah, and I think it'll be crucial understanding, if that is to be the case, who's fit and available.
Yeah. So, plenty of big games in the World Cup this weekend. Now, we haven't got into the Argentina-Australia game really, because there was just so much to discuss for New Zealand and South Africa, but we will get into that big time next week before the big Bledisloe Cup game. So expect plenty of Suali'i chat from Chipper next week.
Yeah, the Argies are good, man. They're a good side. So are the Wallabies. It's set it up excitingly.
So, considering there are 2 rounds left and there is a home and away situation going on here, except Argentina's game is in London against South Africa, who do you feel like is in the box seat to take out the Rugby Championship with 2 rounds left?
I think bonus points are very crucial. So if we go off the weekend, you have to think the Springboks are probably... They can score plenty of points. They've shown they can score plenty of points a number of times, but I don't think we can write off... it's hard. Like, I don't think you can write off any side just from the patches we've seen. Like, the Wallabies can score. They can score points. They can get bonus points as well. So, and obviously they're 1 point ahead at the moment. So technically they'd only need 9. Just off... If you go off the last 12 months, you'd have to say the Springboks are favourites.
Yeah, it definitely looks that way after the weekend, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it could go a completely different direction.
Yeah, and as I say, like, I think the Wallabies pose a different threat. It's a threat nonetheless, but I also think the way they play creates opportunity to score points for New Zealand as well.
We'll see how this all plays out. It should be an interesting few weeks to come. Thank you once again for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Thank you for sending through all your emails and your comments this week. If we didn't answer any of your questions, send them through again. And we'll see what we can do as far as next week is concerned. We really appreciate your feedback and for getting involved in the show. Thank you to everyone who helps put the show together. We will catch you next week. Mā te wā.